What does it mean to be chosen? To be told that you are destined for a higher purpose. To know that every decision you make might leave an impact. To hold the very fate of the world in your hand. This burden falls on those who are known as the chosen one. Stories often employ this trope because it represents a deep human fascination with destiny, purpose, and the idea that an individual can alter the fate of the world. The chosen one is one of the most popular tropes in all of storytelling. When done well, it can be compelling, but this trope has also been widely criticized because it's been used in a lazy way to justify the hero's journey and as a way to remove all agency from the so-called chosen one. Doing this can make it predictable and boring. It could lower the stakes of the story. So how do you use the chosen one in a way that isn't boring or ineffective? Some of the best stories challenge this particular concept of destiny. They use the chosen one trope to reveal a more profound truth, that greatness is earned. The chosen one is a trope where a character, usually the protagonist, has somehow been chosen as the only one capable of defeating evil, saving the world, or resolving some kind of major conflict in a story. It's very common in fiction and is often paired with the quintessential hero's journey. The fundamental problem with the traditional chosen one is the guarantee. No one wants to know exactly how a story ends, and the chosen one always risks doing that. For example, if a prophecy explicitly states how and when the hero will defeat the villain, all tension is drained from the conflict. If everything is handed to the protagonist on their way to resolving the conflict, there's no point, because we can expect good old plot armor and inconsequence. A lot of stories that we love employ the chosen one trope in different ways to keep it fresh and exciting for the audience. The chosen one trope is not just about a prophecy per se. It manifests in different ways, and understanding them is key to subverting or deconstructing this trope. The chosen one appears in various ways in a story. It could be by prophecy, literal selection, a scenario where they are chosen by an inanimate object like a weapon, i.e., only the chosen one can wield this weapon, or the chosen one belongs to a special bloodline. But I want to focus on the most common versions of this, and that is prophecy and literal selection. The chosen one could appear in the form of prophecy. We all know how this trope goes. Some oracle or sage prophesies of the one that will emerge and defeat the great evil, and then we follow the story of the protagonist as they venture into the world. This has been done in many stories across all media. However, the trope can be subverted in powerful and compelling ways that challenge the notion of absolute fate. One method is to show the prophecy as misinterpreted or deliberately manipulated. This could make it more interesting and compelling, adding a bit more depth. This is where the prophecy isn't as cut and dry as we are led to believe. It's either just vague enough to apply to many people, or it's just not correct. A great example of this is in the Lego movie. This movie deconstructs the chosen one trope through satire by pointing out the ridiculousness of an ordinary person being destined to be the savior of the world. It begins with a prophecy of a hero called the Special, who will find the piece of resistance and stop the Kraggle from destroying their world. Emmet, Brickowski, the protagonist, is introduced as the most generic, boring, and forgettable character possible, and he stumbles onto this piece of resistance by accident, becoming the chosen one. As the story unfolds, the prophecy turns out to be a lie, and the piece of resistance is just an ordinary building block. And Emmet is forced to confront the fact that his specialness is a result of pure coincidence. The story removes his predetermined role and puts him on equal footing with everyone else. The power to save the world wasn't in the prophecy. It was in the courage of a normal person to take responsibility and improvise. Emmet's generic nature and formulaic life is also used to save their world, because his willingness to follow instruction helps to create a plan that uses the skill of all the master builders, reinforcing the film's message that anyone can become a hero if they choose to believe it. Another example of challenging this trope to be more in-depth is to reveal that the act of being chosen is a burden, not a gift, forcing the hero to fight both the villain and the crushing expectations of the prophecy itself, ultimately demonstrating that genuine heroism comes from sacrifice and choice, not divine decree. And who better to embody this than...
My name is Aang.
Not Aang, Aang, the last Airbender. Aang is a perfect example of how the weight of being the chosen one can drive your actions and how this destiny clashes with your ideals. Aang is chosen as the Avatar, the only one in the world who can bend the four elements. He's one in a long line of avatars tasked with maintaining the balance of the world, but he's 12. He's a pacifist. He just wants to play and goof off as a kid normally does. But this responsibility is such a burden he literally runs away from the air nomads and ends up being frozen in suspended animation for a whole century. When he wakes up, he realizes the severe consequences of his actions. His people have been wiped out, the world is in chaos and turmoil, and the Fire Nation has basically subjugated the other nations. And to make matters worse, he has to learn the other three elements and defeat the Fire Lord in less than a year. Throughout the whole series, Aang has to come to grips with the fact that he would eventually have to kill the Fire Lord to save the world. The climax of the series depends entirely on Aang bearing the ultimate weight of his chosen one status. Before facing Ozai, he is struggling with the moral dilemma no one else can solve. His duty to save the world is in direct conflict with his deepest spiritual beliefs. His journey to find a way to defeat Ozai without taking his life is a burden that he carries alone, one that even his closest friends and past lives cannot lighten, because everyone has basically told him to kill Ozai. His past lives tell him he needs to do this because it's his duty to use any means necessary to bring balance to the world. In this moment, him being the chosen one doesn't mean anything. It creates a crisis for him. His eventual victory is not the fulfillment of destiny, but it's him carving out a new path that honors his own values. Ultimately, by seeking help from the Lion Turtle to achieve energy bending, Aang's narrative defines what it means to be the chosen one. His greatest challenge isn't mastering the elements or defeating Ozai, it's carrying the crushing expectations of history and the world without losing his essential self. His triumph isn't the fact that he was going to win, which wasn't even a guarantee by the way, but that he found a way to win that was true to who he was. He shoulders the destiny of the Avatar but reshapes it through his own morality, proving that the true weight of being the chosen one is the responsibility to choose for one's self. The chosen one could also manifest in the form of literal selection, i.e., actually being chosen by another being. Maybe in the heat of the moment or through personal biases, they are chosen. It's not a divine mandate, but a choice made by another sentient entity based on traits the chosen one possesses. There are other ways it manifests, like many stories where the protagonist or supporting character is chosen by chance, like almost every superhero story ever. This method instantly puts an ordinary person in an extraordinary role. The process of selection itself often serves as a powerful symbol of worthiness. It suggests that the hero possesses an intangible quality: purity, courage, humility, or simply the right heart. For me personally, I like when this chosen one is used in this manner because it leaves more room for agency than with a predetermined fate in the case of prophecy, like with Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya is born without superpowers in a world full of superpowered people, but his dream is to be a hero, which is hard to do if you are quirkless. He is eventually chosen to be a hero by his idol All Might because, like Midoriya, All Might was born quirkless and knows the frustrations that come with wanting to be a hero without superpowers. All Might witnesses him charging into a dangerous situation to save his friend even without powers, and ultimately bestows him the quirk One for All, making him the next in line as the symbol of peace. As the series progresses, we see how this trope is challenged. First, Midoriya was chosen purely by chance. He wasn't the candidate for One for All. He was just at the right place at the right time. But his show of bravery is what turns him into a candidate that has to prove that All Might's choice wasn't a wrong one. The trope is also shown in more depth by making One for All a burden to Deku. He has to physically train his body to handle the effects of using One for All. Midoriya is burdened by physical limitations. He has to be more cautious than others, more inventive and more creative in using his newly acquired power to lessen the load on his body. And as the series progresses, the story reveals that Midoriya is the ninth holder of One for All, not the one. Midoriya must interact with the spirits of the previous users to truly master One for All. He doesn't just gain power, he inherits a responsibility to defeat All for One, and this transforms the single hero journey into a multi-generational race. His victory will be a collective collective one, earned by the combined effort of all the previous holders. This shows that through collective effort and hard work, the power of the chosen one is earned and not predetermined. The chosen one could also be approached in a scenario where the system or mechanism of the chooser is flawed or broken. In these narratives, the act of choosing is not necessarily a special event. The drama doesn't really come from fulfilling the chosen role, but from the chosen one's struggle against the flawed nature of the system that chose them. And a great example of this, since I've been doing a rewatch of the show, is none other than Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a great example of portraying the system that creates the chosen one as flawed. The series introduces us to the concept of slayers, young women who are chosen from all around the world to fight vampires and demons. This system is headed by the Watchers Council, who identify potential slayers and train them to take up the role of slayer. According to these Watchers, there can only be one slayer at a time, which doesn't even make sense. How can one girl patrol the whole world? The story shows that the Watchers Council never really cared for these young girls, treating them more like tools rather than people. Their lives are not considered, their needs are tossed aside, and they are advised to steer clear from interpersonal relationships, condemning them to a life of solitude and overwhelming burden. Their lives are constantly at risk, and they struggle to balance being slayers with everyday life. The toll it takes on one person is unsustainable, leading to resentment and early death. The slayer is almost always called as a teenager when she's at her most physically and emotionally vulnerable. The system preys on this, aiming to mold her into a weapon before she can develop a full identity outside of being the slayer. Throughout the series, Buffy rebels against the Watchers Council system by refusing to be their disposable, isolated tool. Instead, she develops a powerful support system in her friends and constantly challenges their oppressive authority. The entire series builds towards Buffy's radical act in the series finale, which was aptly named Chosen. By using Willow's magic to share the Slayer power with all potentials worldwide, she fundamentally shatters every flaw of the system. The activated potentials can now choose to fight. It solves the problem of geographical limitation in that there are now thousands of Slayers instead of just one. She ends the cycle of early death where one dies and the next Slayer is called, and the burden and power are shared, creating a sisterhood. By dismantling the system, she transforms the chosen one into an army of equals and strips the council of its sole means of control. It's a nice payoff to the series and shows how being chosen by an oppressive system does not define the chosen one. Ultimately, a story could play it straight or try to subvert the trope, but everything boils down to great characters and a great story. There are many stories with a cut and dry chosen one that are great, and there are also many ways to challenge this trope that leads to more in-depth explorations of destiny and fate. This trope has endured for decades and will still be used in the future because it's something that appeals to us as humans. The concept of an ordinary person being chosen to do extraordinary things. It's one that we can all relate to even as a fantasy, because who doesn't want to be told they are special enough to save the world? Thanks for watching. What stories do you love with the chosen one trope? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There are links in the description for those who want to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.